So this is a short video to just go over how you would give your peer feedback for your first draft of your paper. So each of you are responsible for two other students' papers. And so there are some videos that are on Moodle about how you would access um, uh, your Microsoft account, and there's instructions on there on how to do that. And there's also instructions on how to do peer review on like a laptop or a PC or computer. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of guidance if you're doing this from your iPad. Because some of you might be working from your iPad. Now, if you don't have your Microsoft account logged in and set up, then you're only going to be able to view the papers. You're not actually going to be able to give feedback. So I want to make sure that you guys know that you really need to make sure that if you're going to use your iPad, that you're signed in with your Microsoft account. And that's a little bit different than you might, be used to. So make sure you follow those directions. So if you're on your iPad and you're in a paper, you've pulled it up, you're going to want to provide track changes in the paper so that when you give the paper back to the owner, that they actually know what kinds of feedback that you're providing. So don't just make changes to the paper, actually go in and make suggestions and make sure track changes is on, whether you're using a PC or a laptop or you're using your iPad, so that your peer review person knows what you're suggesting. And perhaps there are occasions when the reviewer is incorrect, and it's nice to see where those changes were made, because those might need to be fixed by the writer. So one thing that I'm doing here is taking a screenshot. I didn't mean to do that, but here I'm going to show you guys how to access the suggested track changes in on the iPad. So here I'm pressing this little 3 button ellipses there, and then we're going to select suggest changes. So here you're going to see that it's turned on, and if you'll notice, there is a little green arrow here, or a little text here that says you are suggesting. So it tells you where your cursor is and it tells you what you're suggesting. So let's say that you want to suggest that a person adds a comma or takes a comma away, or adds something specific to this particular text, or maybe they spelled something wrong, right? So maybe here in MRI, they did not put the actual word. So maybe we want to put magnetic resonance imaging, and then we want to, in parentheses, put this. And so you're going to see that everything that I suggest is actually in green, and that's going to jump out to the person, and they can actually view it as a complete document. They can view it with the changes, without the changes, however they want to view it. And you can view this on your own received papers. Now, another thing that is common that students do is that they don't provide really critical feedback that's helpful. So one thing that you have to consider is to tell somebody that something sounds weird is not super helpful unless you can help them sort of clarify it. So one thing that, like, for example, I've seen in a lot of peer reviews is they'll select the sentence, and then you can see here it says add comment, okay? And the comments here are at the bottom. Okay, this might be a little bit different depending on what device you're on. So you might say, this sentence is awkward, okay? Now, that's fine to say it sounds weird, but what you really need to do is expand on that, right? So don't just tell somebody, oh, that's weird. What's weird about it? So you could say, because I don't understand what you mean by the description of brain areas. Okay. Be specific. Why is it awkward? Why is it weird? How is it not tying in? Maybe even Day suggested a rewording, and then give the person an actual sentence that, maybe better explains what they're saying. Or maybe you don't know what they're saying, so you're telling them, maybe you can say, this is my interpretation of what you're saying. And you know what? It could be wrong. That might not be what they're trying to say after all. And then they know, okay, well, this is how this section is reading. and perhaps I need to reword this. And so, you'll sort of have the send button there, and make sure that when you're done, you do save this. And there's a proper saving name that you need to put on here. And then, all of your comments, on the document. So as you're moving through, maybe there's a sentence that you're like, okay, you don't have a citation, or you need a citation. So maybe you can, take the sentence and select the whole thing, and maybe you can say, this sentence needs a citation. Now, this particular sentence doesn't, but if this were the case, maybe you would say this needs a sentence, a citation, the sentence needs a citation, or this idea needs a citation, whatever it might be. So as you're moving through the paper, some things that you're going to be looking for are, formatting stuff. Did they, is everything double spaced? Times New Roman, 12-point font? Do they have section headers? Maybe you comment on the fact that you're reading through it and it doesn't follow a logical pattern. They're jumping around a lot. Well, maybe at the very end of the paper, that's a comment that you have in the actual rubric. And so you should be taking the peer review rubric that's posted on Moodle, and then you should copy it and paste it to the end of the paper and provide feedback. So remember, you're not giving points. You are going through and you're trying to understand what they're saying and making sure it makes sense. And if there are any spelling errors, grammatical errors, you can comment on those. But you're also commenting on the actual structure of the paper, and there's sections in the rubric for that, because that's what you're going to be graded on overall. You can have a perfectly formatted paper, everything is great, but if the idea doesn't make sense, and if the paper doesn't follow a logical pattern, then of course that's a problem. So things that you should be looking for essentially are that you want to make sure that the thesis statement is in the right location. So the thesis statement should be at the last sentence of the first paragraph of the introduction. You should be looking to the conclusions to tie all that in together. You should be looking for a nice flow of ideas with headings and subheadings to guide the reader along the different ideas. You should be looking at making sure that the argument makes sense. Now, I know many of you did not meet the page requirements for the first draft, but again, I was very clear about quality over quantity, and so make sure you comment on that. If there is a particular, page number that they just did not meet, actually say, hey, you need more information and you need more pages. Maybe you can make a suggestion of a section that they could kind of flesh out a little bit. Maybe they're 5 pages short, and say, ooh, I want to know more about this, or I feel like it needs more explanation here. And you can give suggestions on that. Another thing that you're going to want to do is, and I'm going to jump to the end here, is your different references need to make sure that, one, they're structured correctly. So, make sure that, for example, your whatever reference you have here, so for example, low, that low is cited somewhere in the paper. It could be 1 time, it could be 10 times, it doesn't matter. Make sure that is cited somewhere in the paper, if this were an example, and then make sure that if low is cited somewhere in the paper, that you also see it in the references section. So it should match up. There should be no citations in the actual text that aren't somewhere, that aren't actually in the references section. You should have no sources in the references section that aren't cited at least 1 time somewhere in the text. So don't skip the references section. Make sure that you are going through and you're looking to make sure that information is actually in the paper and in the references section. A lot of people like to skip this because they think, oh, it's not important. There are going to probably be things that you miss, and that's the reason why it's just a first pass, and that's okay. Just do the best that you can, and if you ever have the ability to do so, you see a formatting error, you see an error, help them by fixing it. So here, there's a period error here, so that period needs to be fixed there. uh, another thing too is if you can actually see a pattern of errors, you don't necessarily have to fix every single one, but perhaps you go through and you say, you make this error throughout your paper, please fix all of them, and then actually give them the APA page number or section number of where you got that information. So let's say that they have a citation that they keep doing throughout their text, and it's a 3-author citation, but they keep listing the 3 authors. You know that if it's 3 authors, you would actually do the first author and then et al. And the year. So let's say they keep making this mistake. Well, instead of fixing it every single time, you could highlight the first time they do it and say, according to the APA manual, and then give the actual section of where you found this in the APA manual, you only need to do first author et al. And then tell the person to fix it throughout their paper. You don't have to fix every little thing if it's a repetitive error that, you can flag it once and tell them go ahead and fix it throughout your paper. So if you have any questions about this process, or if you have any questions about, what you're doing, and if you're not sure about the feedback that you're giving, let the person know, I'm not sure, but I think this is correct, or I think this way is correct. You can always ask me as well. I'm happy to help. But hopefully you found this video helpful in being able to see some of the common issues that we have around peer review. So this is just a few tips for you as you go through and you actually edit and provide feedback for the papers.